Hello, everyone. We're back for our fifth night of panels. Tonight, we're going to be talking about superhero origin stories with these lovely folks. If you have any desire to look at the rest of the convention, we've got all our videos up on YouTube, but the easiest place to go find us is at superhero-fiction.com. So tonight's going to be all about origin stories, which is kind of a funny story because I hate origin stories. From a movie standpoint, I should iterate that. I enjoy a good book origin story. So why don't we do some quick introductions, and then we're going to dive in and see what we can discover to make a good origin story, aka an origin story I will read. So let's start. Lucas.
Okay.
Tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. My name's Lucas Flint. I am an author of mostly adult superhero fiction, but I've also got some superhero RPG stuff out, and I've also got a Kickstarter that's coming out at the end of the month to raise funds for the audiobook version of my first superhero book, Superheroes Test. That's launching on Saturday, May 30th. And if you want to find more links to my books and stuff, you can go to www.lucasflint.com. Some of my stuff's in KU, some of it's wide, but if you want to find all my books, you can go to my website.
And you have a lot of first-in books, so you must have quite a few origin stories.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Charlie, how about you?
I'm Charlie Askew. My first book, Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark, was published by Lanternfish Press back in 2018. Won a Forward Indies Award, and then I published through 2080 the Judges prequel series. I wrote one of the compilation novellas for it called When the Light Lay Still. So those are my publishing items.
Consider me impressed then.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations all across the board.
Thank you.
Chris, you've got some new stuff coming up I'm kind of excited about.
Yeah, I have been writing superhero stuff for a long time. Lots of short stories, but and a couple of novellas. But I've been working with Jamie Castle. Steve Bowyer, that's his pen name. Jamie Castle, and he's one of the people whose anthologies my stories have appeared in, and we're launching a new series based on my superhero universe that I created. So it should be coming out soon. It's going to be at least 4 books that are planned right now, and 2 of them are pretty much done, so they should be coming out soon.
I think we might have been in the same anthology together.
Yeah, we're in the same series.
Okay.
I'm not sure. We're his superhero anthologies. I think I was in 5 out of 6. I think you were in the one I wasn't in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, see, that's how I got in. You decided not to do it. Karen, how about you?
Well, hello. I am Karen Diem. I am the author of the Arca superhero urban fantasy series, following the adventures of Zeta Garcia. That's pretty much the only series I have out right now. I have a couple other things on the burners, but mostly I just focus on Zeta and her fumbling her way through an assortment of adventures. If you want to find out more, you can go to www.karendiem.com. I've got first chapters. I think I've got a couple deleted scenes and that sort of stuff there.
And just because I want to brag a little bit, Karen Diem won our cover award contest for 2019. So
it's true.
You got to check it out because it's an awesome cover.
My covers are really excellent. They are totally not done well. However, I'm still paying them off. So please, by all means, check them out.
And last but not least, my partner in crime, Trish.
Hey, Hi, everybody. I'm Trish Heinrich. I'm the author of the Vigilantes superhero universe. I actually just launched the second series in that universe right in the middle of this lovely pandemic, which is, that we all know, is a fantastic time to launch a book. So that's the Heroes of High Tide that just launched. It's my first female romantic relationship in books. She's also my first African-American protagonist, and I'm really excited about it. And then the other series is a trilogy called The Rise of Heroes, and that is complete and is now available in a box set. And everything is on Amazon or superherofiction.com.
And my name is Jeremy Flagg, and my series is my universe is the Children of Nostradamus universe. My first series has been out for a little while now, and I am just getting ready to prep my next series in the universe. So I'm kind of excited about that. But thank you everyone for coming tonight. I know it's a Friday and we all have so many things we should be doing right now. And of course we're not. So I know, like, is one of the things that moderators are supposed to do is they're supposed to keep everything moving and positive and all perky, and perky I can handle, positive is questionable. So I want to know, sorry to start this off on a bad note, what is the origin stories you are tired of seeing? And we're going to build up to good ones, because I know you write good ones, and we'll talk more about your books when we get there. So what origin stories do you hate seeing right now? Let's do Chris. How about you?
Well, I think there's certain ones that we see over and over again that I get tired of. Someone just being an alien without any other, interesting things about the story. If they just happen to be born on another planet, so they have powers, I think is one that's been done a million times. The Batman type one, I think, unless it's tweaked quite a bit, can be, get pretty old, where, the parents are killed and they want to seek vengeance. I think those are the two that probably I get tired of seeing over and over again.
Karen, how about you?
Oh, sure. Call on me when I've got a mouthful of water. Well, like Chris, I am tired of the family in a fridge type of thing, where your parents were horribly murdered, or your poor wife and children, or whoever was tortured, whatever, and now you have dedicated yourself to being a superhero because they existed just to do that. So that would be one. And my other one would be, and I will excuse it for legacy stuff where they didn't know as much about it, radiation. Radiation really only has generally 3 outcomes when you get a high dose. Instant painful death, long-term painful death, and not that long-term, and lingering painful death within 10 years. So
you don't instantly get web powers?
No.
Or see sound waves.
No, but if you're lucky, you might get a little time in a burn ward, and they do give you hot chocolate when you're, missing significant sections of skin and, screaming in agony all the time, because you burn a lot of calories being that injured. Which is perhaps a little more gruesome than we meant to go to. So maybe we should go to the next person before we start talking about, infections and all the sorts of things that can happen at that point.
This could be another panel, like realistic injuries in the superhero universe.
Yeah, there's actually like a Marvel short series where like they did something like that with a Spidey. Like he got bitten by a radioactive spider, but he just got like this horrible scarring, and like other characters had like a few things like that. I forgot the name of it, but yeah, definitely agree.
Charlie, how about you? Are there any origin stories that you're tired of seeing?
I mean, honestly, the what Christopher said kind of hit on the head with like the like the overdone, like, oh, like everybody in vengeance mode, and the refrigerator issue that Karen mentioned. Those two are probably two of my biggest ones. I'd also say, like, it depends on what we're talking about as like an origin, like how they got their powers, or like why they decided to like take that step into being a superhero, because sometimes they're a little separate. So I would say with that one, my biggest one of my, like, the ones that I get annoyed with about seeing so constantly is anyone who's like lawful good, who there was never a kind of real catalyst to like why they decided to be a hero. It's just, oh, I got powers, I'm a hero. Those ones are like just lazy and boring to me. And also even though it can be done good, like such as like Invincible, and things like that, my parent, or like as a supervillain thing, has been kind of done a lot at this point. But just like any trope, it's like how you use it. So but I would say like Huntress and Spoiler and characters like that, where you have like the whole like, oh, I'm just doing this because I've got daddy issues, like that type of thing. It's a little bit tired, but yeah.
If that was the case, we'd pretty much all be supervillains at this
And
point.
how?
Lucas, what about you?
Yeah, I just want to say first that Charlie, I think you're personally attacking me because I actually wrote a series called The Supervillains Kids, and the main characters. Yeah,
It can be good.
yeah. I'm sure it's good. Yeah, but yeah. But back to the question. I'm not really. I wouldn't say they're. I mean, I sort of understand all of y'all's points, but I'm not really tired of any particular origin story. I would say, because I think all of them can still be done well. I mean, depending on how it's done. But I guess if, so it's not like there's one that I like. Oh, here he is, Radiation or whatever, or Revenge or something. It's like I'm more interested in seeing how the writer handles it and does it. If he can do it in an interesting way. But I guess if I had to pick an origin story that I think is already done, I guess the Radiation would probably be that type of thing. Would probably be my choice because of the different So like what Kieran was saying about Radiation's not terribly it doesn't actually give you superpowers in real life, so it's a little harder to take it seriously nowadays.
And I think you've got a good point there, that the fact that it's not necessarily the origin story that's so tiring. It is really the lazy reliance on the expectation of them, maybe.
Yeah, I guess people not. It's like anything else in writing. It can be done. Things can be done well, or it can be done badly, depending on how they do it. And so there's a lot of it depends on the writer a lot of times. Other things. I think even a good writer can take even the most cliched story and make it interesting, in my opinion.
Okay.
But
challenge is accepted.
Yeah.
Trish, what about you? Is there anything that you're tired of seeing?
Everybody really hit on the major ones, I think. And it is ironic because I kind of pretty much did this in my first series, but I agree with Karen and Charlie with the fridging of the family, or the one that I really despise is the fridging of the significant other, like girlfriend in particular. Or like the little sister, or like the innocent, or the old man, like that meant like in Uncle Ben and Peter Parker's case. Like I'm just like, oh, another dead relative, another dead girlfriend. Like really, like
the only man in the comics universe to stay mostly dead, Uncle Ben.
Yeah, and it's true. We really haven't had a retcon of Uncle Ben's death that I could think of.
Marvel's writing it now.
Yeah, probably. But like I said, it is kind of ironic that that's one of the ones I hate, because I kind of did that in my first trilogy. I tweaked it, I feel like, enough to be acceptable to me, but it is one that I roll my eyes at now.
I think the one that drives me nuts, and it's going to account for a lot of superheroes really quickly, is if your origin story requires you to be rich, white, and on a plane, that somewhere goes down
Yeah.
in which you somehow learn the natives' fighting ability better than them, and then you go
Of course.
and change the world.
Oh God!
So I mean,
Now I'm queasy.
Batman, Arrow, Iron Fist, like, I mean, really, what I just need to do is get a plane and fly over Tibet, and
It's like
I'm not quite
appropriation
rich,
of
so I'll
superpower.
get.
Yeah.
So it would either be that or, and I saw Scott mentioned in the comments, and this goes more for TV because you can't really do it in a book as well. When someone picks up a mantle or assumes an ability, and then they're just like, quick, we're going to have a montage next episode, but the episode after that, I'm going to be a fully trained fighter with absolutely no shortcomings. But
No hesitation.
yeah,
No fear.
the Arrowverse is
They learned
famous
that
for
from
taking-
those natives they had to save.
True. Okay, so this is going to be such a broad question, and we can take it wherever we want, but what is an origin story that you feel has been done well, whether it be comics, books, or on screen? I'm going to give everyone just a second for that. I think my personal favorite origin story has been in something like Raising Diem, where the kid who gets the powers, we watch him, but he's not the main character. So the protagonist, which is his mom, we kind of watch how she becomes the hero to a super child. Those type of things are really good. But Chris, what about you? Give me an origin story that beats all origin stories.
I
It's hard to nail down one.
I like Captain America's. I think it's the idea that he wanted to fight for his country so badly and then wasn't able to, and then subjected himself to being a guinea pig and experimented on in order to do that was pretty cool idea.
So are you kind of a fan of the rise above the odds type of situation?
Yeah, I think I don't like it's hard to say this because I have characters that are like this, but I don't like when someone's doesn't have to work for it. I think it's kind of like what you were saying, if they're already, it's like when the first modern Batman movie came out in 1989, and people were saying it was crazy to have Michael Keaton play Batman, and people were like, well, if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, you don't have to put on a bat mask and costume in order to scare people. People are going to be scared of you because you're huge and you're probably going to be able to beat the crap out of anybody. So I think it's more interesting to have someone who, like Steve Rogers was before he went through the super soldier program, who couldn't have been a superhero under any other circumstances probably, but he wasn't accidentally bit by a spider. His parents, weren't murdered in front of him. It was he chose to do what he did, and he did it for a noble reason. So.
And it's kind of nice because his motivation was the same motivation before powers and after.
Right.
And I love the fact that you just gave Michael Keaton some love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
Charlie, what about you?
Okay, so I would say I don't want to cheat and say two, but I kind of have two. So my two all-time favorite for two entirely different reasons. One is the classic Spidey origin story, because granted it's a bit overdone now. How many times have we seen it in the movies? But even still, it's one of the first origins where you have a hero that does something wrong, and like they have to own that. And that was like really cool to me versus like a lot of other superheroes where like, I mean, granted, he puts too much weight on himself, of course, but he was the reason like Uncle Ben died to some degree. Like he had the chance to stop it, and to have that immediate like kind of karma like shown back to him, and to see why that was wrong, and like it was somebody that wasn't inherently ready to be a hero, but like he did have that moment of, man, I had the power to stop this and I didn't. But I would also say more recently, because that was always my number one, but more recently, the Watchmen TV series, I would say Hooded Justice, his origin story blew me away because they melded so many different things with it, like just the anger, like and rage that you have, like when like you're just so disenfranchised, but you're in this place where you can't do anything about it. So he didn't just put it on a mask uh, for his face, but also his race, which was really interesting. Like, and just there's that scene where he's like kind of crying and putting on the makeup, and like his son sees him, and like he's kind of doing like the part that makes his eyes look like he's white man, and it's like, wow, that's just how layered that was probably one of my favorite origin stories, like with the noose and like because prior to that, Hooded Justice was like why does this dude have a noose? It's so weird, but it all kind of made so much sense that I just, yeah, definitely my favorite origin story, I'd say.
I remember getting to that episode and it was late at night and I was like, cannot go to bed until
Right?
this is over.
Yeah.
That was a outstanding origin story across the board. Lucas, how about you?
I think I'm gonna agree with Charlie that Spider-Man's origin story is, a good one. It's probably my favorite. When I think about it, because it was like he said, it's that, Peter Parker, he, it's an origin story where the year that's something wrong, like Charlie was saying, and it's, I guess I just like characters like that who are trying to redeem themselves, sort of, because that's part of why he became Spider-Man, basically, is that he felt like he'd messed up, and he didn't want to do that again. And I've always enjoyed characters like that. And so it's an origin story I enjoyed, and yeah, it is pretty played out a lot, but it's still a good one in my opinion. It's still a classic.
And what I really like about his is the origin of his power and the origin of the hero are slightly misaligned.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's another good point. Yeah, they're not exactly the same. He didn't get spider powers and I'm going to become a superhero and fight crime instantly. He got to that a little later.
And how old was he when he originally got the powers in the comic?
15, I want to say. Yeah,
like 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you were 15 and you just found out you had superpowers?
Oh yeah.
Saving the day probably would not be high on my agenda.
Oh, God, no. All the teams. I would just be on football, track, everything. Who's a geek now? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. Make fun of my comic books.
Right? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, how about you?
Well, there have been some great examples. Nightcrawler, I like the fact that as much as he had all that adversity just by existing, he's still, continuing on to be a force of good. And in a lot of ways, that wasn't something he questioned. He questioned a lot of things, but it was always, I'm going to do the right thing, even when it sucks. So that would be one of my favorites. Another one, and I know I mentioned it recently, and everybody always laughs, is The Greatest American Hero. I mean, the dude, talk about adversity. He never really masters his powers. I mean, every episode is a struggle. And I just love that. I love the fact that he's got to keep working. And he never quite gets to that, forget the golden ring. He's still trying to get to the cardboard one.
Trish,
Then
what
again,
about you?
with the value of toilet paper these days, maybe the cardboard one's harder to reach. I don't know.
That might be worth its weight in gold at this point.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna go possibly kind of obscure. If nobody is a Doctor Who fan,
Yes.
you might not know this one, but it's a Christmas episode, and it is Peter Capaldi's Doctor lands on he's on this roof, and this sick little boy sees him and is like, "What the heck is going on?" And I actually think it's Capaldi falls off the roof, and he's like hanging there, and he's like trying to get in the little boy's window. And shenanigans happen, and he tells the doctor tells the little boy, "Here, take this," and it's this like little pill, and the boy thinks, "Oh, he's giving it to me because I'm sick," and he ends up swallowing it, and the doctor's like, "Okay, give me," he calls it something, and he's like, "You told me to take it." The doctor's like, "Yeah, right," and he's like, "I took it," like he swallowed it, and the doctor's like, "Oh my god!" It's basically a wish fulfillment kind of like alien thing, and what it does is it fulfills your deepest wishes. And so this little boy loves comic books, and he loves stories about Superman. So what ends up happening, he gets x-ray vision, he gets bulletproof, he's able to fly, and you see the doctor visit him throughout his like adolescence. And my favorite scene is when when the x-ray vision has come on him in middle school, and he just stares at the floor. He just, because he can see through everyone's clothes, and he's mortified. And I love it because it takes the alien origin story, it takes the Superman origin story, and it tilts it, and it makes it just a little bit different, because it is alien in origin, but it's this little boy who just wants to be a hero and do the right thing. And it brings up some great like logical problems with the Clark Kent Superman personas. And it's just really delightful, like to see this really innocent, sweet guy develop superpowers, and the doctor is the sidekick in the adventure, really, which never really happens to the doctor. The doctor's always the hero, but in this particular episode, it's the little boy that grew up to be Superman. And I love it because I love ones where you take a tropey origin thing and you just tweak it a little. And that's what this one did. So it's a Doctor Who Christmas episode. I think you can find it on Amazon. But that's one of my favorites. It's sweet.
That makes me think a lot of Superman's Secret Identity. There's this short film. Yeah, where where it's like Clark Kent in the real world, except he like just this dude in our world named Clark Kent, where Superman comics exist and everything, but then he gets Superman's powers, and it was just like, it sounds like, it's really awesome.
It's a lot like that, actually. That's probably one of the reasons I love it so much, because I love that limited run. I thought that was a brilliant take on Superman. Yeah.
So I'm going to skip around a little bit here. So we all write novels, and obviously we've all been inspired on some level by either comics or even silver screen adaptations of superheroes. What is the advantage that we have as authors when it comes to an origin story, and when we are creating these new origins for our heroes? Is there anything that's inherent in writing a novel that gives us a benefit over another medium? Chris? Keep asking and dropping it right on you. Surprise.
I think that there's several advantages to being able to flesh things out. I mean, I started as a screenwriter for a lot of years, and you really have to keep things quick and simple. And in a novel, you can really flesh out the origin. You can add a lot of details that you wouldn't be able to add in a screenplay, and that would just take too long on most movies, certainly, and some probably to some extent in most TV shows. So I just think that the sheer volume of words that you're able to use in a novel, which is unlimited, basically, gives you a big advantage over other media.
Anybody else?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Any advantages of using novels to tell origin stories over another medium, perhaps?
I would definitely say that there's like what Chris was saying as far as like fleshing things out. Like with a novel, you just have time, like versus like other mediums like comic books. Like if your audience is different too, for the most part, because people who like read any novel like for fun generally know what they're getting into as far as like patience is concerned, unlike a lot of other media where like if you have like a comic book fan and only a comic book fan, like you read the first issue and nothing happens at all, you're just like, well, like this is boring. So you have like that 30 pages or so to really like catch them. Granted, not to say like in a novel you don't have to hook your reader by like the first couple of pages, but in a different way where you can really take your time and like going into who this person is, and the powers are so much a secondary thing for people to really like dig into it. Not to say that's not the case with comics, but not as much, I think. Yeah, and then I also like with novels like you can change like pacing around a lot versus a comic book form. Like you can bounce back and forth a lot easier. You can play with just perspective a lot simpler. Like you can go first person, third person, etc. Whereas like a comic book, generally you're unless you're doing something very specific, you're kind of pigeonholed to a very particular format. I feel like when it comes to perspective. But yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point about the pacing and how much patience a person has. I think that's the only complaint I've ever heard for the Daredevil Netflix series was it took him so long to get his suit.
I love that though, but yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it's the only thing you hear
In
people.
all fairness, I got a complaint. I don't get a lot of reader mail, but I did get a complaint or two that my character did not get her costume in the first book.
Really?
Yeah,
that's a big deal to people.
I got like
costume.
2 complaints, ignoring all the negative reviews, because they don't exist. La la la. But one of the complaints was that she did not get her costume in the first book.
Huh.
And that they were
that intentional for your series?
Yes. Because mine's meant to be a little more realistic of a series. And I think I actually do have a point where my character says, well, look, I don't know why you're expecting to go out on the streets and suddenly start fighting crime. I mean, if you get a new baseball bat, you don't suddenly start walking around hitting people with it. You know, it makes no sense. You know, that's not what the baseball bat's for. You know,
Some people might,
but those of us who are not writing villains, clarify.
Yeah, writing. Yeah, sure.
Becoming.
Yeah.
Lucas, what about you? Is there anything unique to the writing format that makes it a better origin story format?
I'd say we've made some good points so far about like with novels, you can go more in depth in things and flesh things out a bit more than you would in like a comic book or even in like a movie or a TV show even. I guess you can show more. It's easier to get into a character's head, like in a novel, and show their thought process, what they're thinking, that it is in more visual mediums. I mean, you can do that in any medium, but I think that's one of the advantages I've always thought of novels have over like other types of mediums, especially over like movies or TV shows, where you can go really in depth in the character's mind and maybe make the origin story seem more. I don't know, make the reader care about it more, understand it more. Like I said, just being able to flesh it out more, I think, and spend more time on it. And obviously, in a novel, the pacing needs to be good, of course. You can't just drag on and forever, but there's more room, I think, for fleshing things out and adding detail in a novel than in other media.
I have this image. I have this image right now of Tony Stark in the first Iron Man, just sitting down, dear diary, and we just get the internal monologue.
Yeah.
No, that brings up a great point. Like for us, our thought bubbles could be a good chunk of the novel, whereas you can't have. I think of like Silver Surfer, where 95% of the words written in Silver Surfer are thought. We see him do and think and nothing else. I think that's why I liked Spider-Man so much, because it found a great balance between his internal monologue and the doing and the saying.
Or like Kick-Ass, like where he had a lot of that too.
I agree with you 100% on that novels give you that ability. Trish, how about you? Anything to add?
I was just thinking, I think you can be a little more, and maybe I'm not a wide comic reader. I haven't read a ton. But I think in novels you can play a little bit more with what an origin story is. You can start your novel in the middle of the hero's journey and have it and tell it in flashback. I mean, if you're really skilled, I know people tell you not to do that, but I mean, I feel like you have so much more flexibility in the how and in the way that you could make it different. I feel like comic book readers, there's certain expectations, there's certain I's you got to dot and T's you have to cross. Whereas in a novel, I think because I feel like in the genre, it's still kind of new. The rules are still being made in some ways that you can have a different kind of origin story. So I think you can play with the tropes a little bit easier, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
As long as you make sure they get their costume in the first book.
Exactly. As I am learning, that's like a have to have. I had no idea.
The other thing is not to mess up your gun terms.
Oh
yeah. I got an email on that. That was my.
Oh jeez. I just try not to use weapons that I can't like Google really quickly. Like
I worry about my Google with that. It's like all the random weaponry and things like that.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I actually had double checked that item, and then I had it crash, and had to go back a version.
Oh no!
And when I was
redoing
the work, I missed that item. Yes. So they actually called me out on it, and I'm like, "You're absolutely right. I'm an idiot." What I wanted to say about the novel format was that you can dribble out the origin story a lot more with the
That's
comic
a good point,
books, because in the comic books you have to have a certain amount in your face with those, but with a novel you show part of it, and then maybe they don't figure out all the rules or why it happened, and maybe you never explain why it happened based on the powers panel the other day, but you can even make it the plot, or a running subplot in here is, how did they end up with these powers, that seemingly came out of nowhere or whatever. So I think that is one of the novelization things. I want to just squeeze that in there before I got too distracted with remembering my stupidity. It was the magazine versus clip issue.
Yes. Don't ever mess that up.
I know better. I know better. And like I said, I researched it because sometimes there are guns where it's very similar. I put it in there and I fixed. And given that this was years ago, I'm still mad at myself.
You bring up a really good point, though. I'm trying to think Spider-Man specific, just because I read a lot of early Spider-Man much later in life, and then I started picking through storylines. How often can this kid who is now in his early 20s still reference every issue that his uncle died, or that he's carrying a burden, and I get that you're always trying to bring in new readers and whatnot, but we don't suffer from that. It's not like someone's going to pick up a book 2, and I mean, they might, but we don't feel the obligation to rehash the entire origin story partway through book 2. Whereas I feel Uncle Ben dies almost every other issue. And I feel like it's your main character would be like, I'm going to go fight the villain because remember that time? Flashback.
Or like with Nightwing, any other issue, you find him talking about how he used to be Robin, and it's like, yeah, Dick, we know, man. And he's just like, man, I used to hang out with Bruce Wayne. He's Batman. It's like, oh, dude, like, calm down.
And then you got too old for him.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a whole nother panel.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I have a question for you guys. Who here used their whole one, or some of you have written a bajillion and one books. Who here used more than one book to tell the origin story of a character?
Mm.
I'm still kind of dribbling out the causes and the limitations, and they're still trying to figure that out. I mean, I have a book which is most of the. I call it my origin story book because she gets the powers and she has to learn to handle the powers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she's definitely not instant competent by the second book, but she's competent enough that she's no longer randomly turning into pigs, and that sort of thing.
I too have that problem.
Well, you know, when you're a shapeshifter and and you got some control issues, it can be an issue.
So, Lucas, I'm pretty safe in saying that you have more books than the rest of us combined.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I'm willing to almost say maybe a multiple of 2. In your superhero series, do you drag out your origin story, or do you keep the origin story to one book and then have the rest be the story arc?
Yeah, typically the origin story just sort of is contained to one book. You know, and they also get their costumes in the first book, so just so everyone knows. But yeah, so but yeah, typically I do just keep it, you know, in the first book. Then the rest of the books in the series will be whatever plot or character, you know, or arc or whatever I've decided to follow. And the origin story probably might be referenced sometimes, like depending on the exact story, it might be, you know, Rob again. Like I did a sequel series to my minimum wage sidekick series last year. Okay, so the main character in the minimum wage sidekick is a teenager who, like, he drank this experimental science potion thing or a serum that his science teacher made. So he got powers from that. But anyways, in the sequel series, it's like a year, you know, later after the series is over, and his powers aren't, you know, working. They're starting to backfire and stuff. And he needs to get, you know, so he needs to revisit that same serum he drank and go back to his teacher and get another serum to help stabilize its powers. But that's a different, unique situation for me, though. Most of the time, I keep the origin story, you know, in one book. And I mean, like I said, it definitely affects the rest of the series, of course, and I may reference it, but I don't spend more than just one book usually setting it up.
Chris, you have are both of your books coming out pretty close to each other, or are you dragging it out a little?
I actually don't know. I have a new publisher. Athon Books is publishing them, and they haven't actually announced the dates that they're going to be published. So I actually don't know. I just know it's going to be soon.
In your books, is the first book kind of the origin story, or do you drag the origin story out throughout the series?
The first book starts out, the main character already is a hero, and then there are a couple of short flashbacks that explain, and kind of, I mean, in a way, the book is about how everything came about, without giving too much away. It's not really the origin so much.
Okay.
Of that character, but it does reveal a lot of things by the end.
So
it's hard to explain without giving away everything, you know.
So, do you feel that it's more an origin to your universe and less like origin to a specific character?
Well, the main characters are vaguely resemble Batman and Robin. I mean, the main character is a sidekick to a big hero and so he's already the sidekick of this character, but he finds out more during the first book. He finds out more about why he's the sidekick and why his mentor is who he is also. So
Okay.
I guess in a way, it does sort of tell their origins, but it's not. The story is not the origin. It just kind of explains them along the way.
And it kind of sounds like it takes the expected or the established origin and turns that.
Exactly. Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, my original idea was, I mean, I've been a huge Batman fan my whole life, and he's always been my favorite character. But I always preferred Marvel comics when I was growing up because in DC it was like Superman was Superman, and he put on a disguise to become Clark Kent. That was the disguise, and Batman was Batman, but he pretended to be Bruce Wayne, you know. But it was the opposite in Marvel, and I like that better. Peter Parker was a teenager who happened to have powers, so he puts on a mask and becomes a crime fighter, not the other way around. So I kind of wanted to take the DC archetypal characters and give them a Marvel spin.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like, what if Peter Parker was Robin instead of Dick Grayson? And what if Tony Stark was Batman instead of Bruce Wayne?
That tagline makes so much more sense in my head now. Now I get it.
Elevator pitch.
Yeah. And
Um,
so it's not. And so one of the things I did was purposely take those ideas and flip them and subvert the reader's expectations. And I don't know how successful it is. I feel like it does fool the reader into a certain sense of complacency, thinking that, oh, this is how this is going to go. This is basically Batman fan fiction, but it's supposed to lull you into a sense of feeling like it's almost like Batman fan fiction, and then like pull the rug out from under you.
Aha! I'm digging that. Are your books available for pre-order right now?
No, not yet.
You need to get on that. Those covers are amazing.
Thanks. Yeah,
Bravo, Jamie.
I love those covers.
Charlie, so you have Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark out right now.
Mhm.
Are you looking to expand that universe?
Yeah, I actually. So the first book I wrote, it was twice as long as the one that I published, and basically I had to kind of find a way to hack it in two, and it actually worked out really well because it stopped at a point where like the story kind of starts to escalate. So I can I've been working on making that one the second book in its entirety. So that's kind of, thankfully the quarantine time has helped me with having some downtime to write a lot. So I've been working a lot on that. And for like writing exercises, I'll like work on characters within the universe just to kind of like, make sure I'm still doing stuff if I feel quote unquote blocked on my main thing. So it's been kind of fun playing with that. And I've been toying around with ideas of like what I might want to do with those, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so I've been playing around a lot with like origin stories and those. But the main story, his origin as a superhero is in the first book, but it's set up like as a frame narrative where he's telling you kind of how he became the deviously dark spark. So yeah, that's kind of so I guess the second one's an origin story too, but I guess that's as much as I'd want to say about that as far as like
you kind of front load it, origin story, and work off that. I'm kind of, you guys have actually made me think about that. My first book is a neglected origin story where he just has to survive, and then 3 months later happens in the next book and story arc will happen. Trish, what about you? Is your series origin story, does the origin end on book one, or do you take the whole series to tell your origin story?
The first trilogy, so the main three heroes in that, the origin story is done. I mean, by pretty much the middle. It is her arc into becoming her own kind of hero and dealing with her anger and the abuse from her childhood and all of that. But I feel like getting used to working as a team and getting used to like the, being a vigilante, like she kind of gets used to that part by about the midpoint. and then it's more of the emotional stuff. So I do finish her origin story in the first book, but I introduced a character in book 2 who is the main character of the series I'm doing now. And I guess, I mean, her origin story, I mean, she doesn't have a typical origin story. She puts on a suit in book 2, but then she's like, I don't think I really want to be a hero. And so the series now is her figuring out, do I want to be a hero? Where do I want to be a hero? How do I want to be a hero? Because she has some demons in her past she's dealing with. So that one might be the one where, if you're talking about going from not being a hero to accepting being a hero, I suppose I do take 3 books for that. But I feel like it's kind of muddled, if that makes sense. Like, she's got her powers. She's pretty solid with her powers, you know, so that's never really an issue. It's more internal things of, you know, an external conflict than how do I, you know, control my firewalls kind of a thing.
It's always a shame when those get out of hand.
It is.
You just want, you know, a light flambe, maybe make some kebabs for dinner, and next thing you know, you've burned down the house again.
She does flambe a guy in book 1 of her series, like full on barbecue. It was an accident. He was holding a gun to her lover's head, but still, you know, you never want to flambe a guy, really. It's not a good look.
So for all of you, does anyone have the story of acquiring powers, that we start with a mild-mannered average Joe and then they get powers?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
okay. Is there anyone who starts a story, they already are powered and we move forward? It looks like half and half, actually. So for those of you who start as a human, how quickly do you get into developing the power aspect versus introducing us into the world? How fast do we move through this origin to get to an endpoint, or is that your first book right there? No, go for it.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say I think it depends on where you want your story to kind of escalate, because first, like with mine, he gets his powers like around like the second chapter, but I definitely wanted to spend some time, because for one, it's like really fun to write that whole becoming like arc for any character of, like, you know, learning their powers, learning, like, you know, all the ins and outs of like superherodom. So I feel like it's all about like pacing and how much like you have space for it, because if you have like a main story that you need to get to, like a main plot, and you want to also have like the development stage, you have to kind of get things rolling, but not as fast as you would in a comic book, but pretty fast, like within your first couple of chapters, definitely. But yeah, I would say as far as like timing goes.
Yeah, I think mine was chapter 3, so I'm pretty fast there.
Yeah.
Does anyone drag out before getting the powers?
For me, not really. I mean, I get the, you know, usually the main characters will get their powers, or, you know, they first might start using them within the first couple of chapters, maybe. I mean, depending on the book. Now, you know, they may spend the whole book like mastering those powers or trying to, you know, learn how to use them. But usually, I get their powers, you know, get their powers using because that point as quickly as I can, and then just try to, you know, go from there.
Anybody else?
Okay, I've already admitted to dragging things out, so I'm gonna have to be like, "Yep, that's me, dragging my feet again." I have a chapter where she is completely unpowered, and as normal as my main character ever gets, which isn't terribly, to be perfectly honest. Most people are not ex-Olympic athletes. adrenaline junkies and like hyper as all get out. Then I have another 2 chapters, I want to say, maybe 3, before she actually exhibits the powers. I think it's 2. But weird stuff starts happening, and I'm building up, and then there's the big trigger event, because, trigger events they were a trope I couldn't skip. I mean, you're writing this book, and you're like, I love you, trope, come to me.
Okay,
Come closer, baby.
I want to do just a quick round and ask, or in Lucas's case, pick one of your series. What is, actually, Trish, one of your series as well. What is the motivation of your main character? Let's say post powers. Karen, how about you?
Post powers?
Yeah.
At first, she wasn't actually planning to like save the world. She was all just like, all right, cool. This is awesome. I was awesome before, and now I'm like even more so. I'm going to go out and do some really cool stuff now that I don't have to worry so much about not having money, and then things happened. Her brother got kidnapped. Well, that is not going to stand. Especially when it seems like it's not getting resolved by the people who should be resolving it. So, she kind of fell into it that way, and she didn't really set out to be a hero, but she's also not the kind of person who can just walk by a mugging in progress or something, and a lot of times something happens and she's like, well, okay. So
she's got some intrinsic and extrinsic reasoning.
Yeah, she's got a conflicting impulses, really. But she's basically good at heart, so she's not going to stand by and see something bad happen that she could prevent. I mean, she will stand by and go, okay, well, it looks like the cops got that in hand. I don't need to draw any attention to myself. Thank you very much. But on the other hand, they're getting creamed over there. I'm a step in. They need a hand.
By the way, Conflicting Impulses will be the name of my autobiography.
Not like angst and conflicting impulses.
Maybe.
Because I know you like to put that in your books, and we wouldn't want you to leave out one of your hallmarks now.
That'll be the photo, just all angst.
Okay, all
Chris,
angst
what about
all
you?
the time.
What is the main motivation of your POV?
Trish or Chris?
Chris.
Because, sorry, all my whole life, my youngest brother's name is Chris. And when mom would call one of us, both of us would come running.
The main character is turning 16 at the beginning of the book. And for the past 3 years, his motivation has been trying to, get the approval of his father figure, because his mom is a single mother. He never really knew his father, so now that he's a sidekick of a superhero, he's always trying to get his approval. But now he's getting into that rebellious stage, so his motivation is kind of to be his own person and not be in the shadow of his mentor or there were 2 previous sidekicks that had the same name, and so he's like, one of the main running kind of gags through all the books is that he wants to change his name, but there's a superhero guild that you has to approve it, and they're not approving it. They want him to have the same name as the previous sidekicks. So
that sounds like a story that features every one of the teenagers I teach.
Yeah, I'm a teacher too. So yeah.
You're drawing on some experience right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Charlie, how about you? What's the main motivation of your character?
Well, in the beginning, after he gets his superpowers, it's because the world in my book, it's where superheroes it's satire, so superheroes are kind of like the like celebrity with also some political sway as well. So after he gets his powers, he decides as a comic book nerd, that he can kind of navigate this world of superherodom for money and claim and stuff like that. So he does that, but he finds a lot of times that he has to kind of compromise on his identity as a black man in order to kind of get ahead, such as like he's the astonishing Spark, but the media changes his name to the Black Spark and things like that, where I do like a bunch of different stereotypes of like black comic book characters, hence the electric powered black guy, and kind of play on the idea of like how much of yourself, do you have to kind of compromise in order to become somebody in that society, and it's that's kind of his main goal, is to kind of just do whatever it takes, no matter how much compromise. Though I try to paint the picture that each compromise is a little more weighted as he kind of goes along his journey. Like doing a commercial for the Colonel's Chitlin Fried Chicken is kind of a bit harsh to do.
Oh,
Anybody else remember the DC Justice League thing where Flash gets an endorsement deal and it's for like hemorrhoid cream or something?
Oh God, yeah.
Wolfar have cream for that.
It's like,
I mean, that was my favorite thing in X-Men, Ultimate X-Men, was Professor Xavier, to keep the Blackbird running, goes and gets a Pepsi endorsement.
Right.
So,
there you go.
Lucas, how about you? Pick a series.
I was thinking my Capes Online series, which is a superhero RPG series. The basic plot is that a police officer gets killed while going on a car chase after a bad guy ends up getting his mind uploaded to Capes Online, which is a superhero, MMO type, virtual reality thing. But he didn't intend on that. Like, before he got into the car crash and got his mind uploaded, he wanted to just be like, his first day on the job as a police officer. He'd always want to be a police officer, and he was also going to get married to his girlfriend, and like, he was just looking forward to living a normal, good life. But then he suddenly finds himself, in this game world where he has to be a superhero, and at first he really doesn't like it, and he's just, just really wants to go back to normal, even though he can't. And so a big part of the book is just him slowly coming to accept that this is his new world. He has to learn to, defend it, and and that he won't get back. And he always wants to go back to the real world, but it sort of ends up being stuck in the game. And so his motivations, both before and after, are pretty different. That's what's extreme different that I can think of for my series.
Trish, how about you?
So I'll choose Colleen. She's the one that's got the series that I'm working on right now. She hides her powers. So she comes from a crime family, and her grandfather really ruled the family with this really terrifying iron hand. So she's hidden her powers from him ever since they started coming out. And in fact, when we meet her in book 2 of the first trilogy, the only reason that she's back in town is to find her brother. I mean, that's really all she cares about. She has no interest in being a hero. She has no interest in anything else. It's find my brother and get the hell out of town. And the way she is now is she loves her neighborhood, and she comes back to it after her grandfather is dead, and now her mother's running the family. And the only reason she comes back is to protect the neighborhood. And so she's very reluctantly choosing to use her powers for others. I mean, if she really had her choice at the beginning of all of this, she'd be living a very quiet life someplace, making art, and every once in a while reheating the coffee, in her mug. And that's what she would do. So she has to come to grips really with, I can use these powers for good, and I have this ability to stop people from hurting the people in the neighborhood that I love. And so that's really her motivation at the beginning. And eventually getting her to the point where she's like kind of embracing being a hero. But right now she's like, I'm not a hero. Do not use that word. I don't want to hear that word. But I do want to circle back around really quick to the jokes we were talking about, like corporate sponsorships for superheroes. I was actually a producer of a web series It was one season, and that was the premise. It was superheroes in the office, and people had endorsement deals. And we actually got actual companies to sponsor the show and then put them in the show as the endorsement.
Awesome.
And one of the
There you go.
best was Top Hot Donuts, who was Shield Maiden's endorsement. And she's like a Viking goddess, and it was like constant like donuts on her breastplate and like just different stuff that we did. And she's constantly posing with the donut in the show. So it's a fun concept, actually. We do have some viewer questions if we want to get to those.
So we're actually going to run out of time.
Oh,
So, yeah,
Yeah.
we're already past the hour. I do want to ask one really quick question, and we'll use this as the wrap up. The Scott, who's been asking a lot of the questions, he's in the group. He can just come join us, and we'll answer questions. So with origin stories, we're going to wrap it up. So what is the origin story that we still need? What are the origin stories that have been neglected and that we are, that there is still a major opening for someone to step up and fill? I'm going to leave this open to anyone because
I think we definitely need more origin stories that focus on a character's identity and how that feeds into their origin. So, and that could be any identity, like just, like your racial background, socioeconomic, like anything, like, and just how that, not necessarily like, and I'm not looking for, I'm not saying like it needs to be like, so like, over the head with it. Like that very annoying scene in Luke Cage where he's like, just, oh, I read Invisible Man and done this and that. It's like, all right, man, calm down. But like where it's like it feels honest in that it's your identity informs who you are, so it's going to inform like how your origin is going to play out. It's going to somehow like be involved in that, and I just think that would be like if we take characters like Bruce Wayne, for instance, like yeah, he becomes Batman and like his money makes him Batman, but we never really find out like how those other aspects of like his I don't know, his entitlements kind of feed into his worldview as to why he would almost be narcissistic enough to think that he can take on all these issues on his own instead of giving back or something. But things like that, like just people's identity filtering into their alter ego, I guess, and how they become it.
anyone else want to jump in? Chris?
I was just going to agree with Charlie and say, he brought up the Hooded Justice one from Watchmen. I would like to see more origins like that. That was really effective. I mean, that was just amazing. That blew me away when I watched that. I'd like to see more origins where instead of going, oh yeah, okay, they got their powers.
Right.
I want to see something that enriches the character.
So really take the power and make it character driven more than I got a ring that can shoot beams.
Right.
Yeah.
And now I'm altruistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trish?
I would really love to see more women, like more people in general, but women in particular, who are larger, who aren't skinny with double D cup boobs hanging out of the top of their costume. I want curvy women to be heroes, and I don't want them to just be heroes like, oh look, they're the plucky secretary. No, come on, give them powers, give them a heroic arc. And also people with disabilities, and I know that's a super challenging thing, but I mean, we had Oracle and we have Daredevil, although some people debate, is he disabled really, because he can technically still kind of see.
Yeah.
So I want more of that. I want to see heroes that are reflective of our world in in all of its, wonderful diversity. I know that word is tossed around a lot, but I just do. I don't want to see the same person over and over again on screen or in a book or in a comic. I want to see something different. And how does a person with curves who's been, maybe brutalized all their life for their size, how do they handle superpowers? How does somebody that, has to walk with two canes, how do they handle that? How do they traverse that world? I think that would be really interesting.
Just pointing out, the men in my book are chubby.
Nice.
Just saying. If you could teleport, you're not going to be skinny. That's just a fable.
Going to say to that, there's actually this awesome series called The Ables. Well, not series, it's a one book where all the superheroes are disabled people who have a superpower, and they have to find ways to utilize it. And it's really well done. It's one of my favorite YA superhero books.
The Ables?
The Ables, yeah.
I'll have to look that up. That sounds really interesting.
Oh yeah, no, it's awesome. And I was just going to mention, because you talked about the curvy character. So in Spark, I made Gravitina, who has the power to control gravity, but half the time she has to find a way to keep herself in the slim, ridiculous over the top costume that they made for her. So she has to constantly alter gravity in order to be in this costume. Because I totally agree.
Finally, someone talks about that.
I have a running gag where one of my characters has a wimpy arms.
Oh,
okay.
Because she's my token supermodel type character.
Oh yeah.
And my main character, who is, she works out for 6 to 8 hours a day, because little bit hyperactive, I may have mentioned. She considers her supermodel-ish friend. She's like, you got those wimpy arms. It actually comes up in a book. She tries to throw something to my hero and falls way short.
Oh.
And they're just like, you haven't been doing your arm exercises, have you? Come on,
my novel, the big villain at the end of the series isn't the dude trying to destroy the world. It's stairs. Because if you told me I had to run up 6 flights of stairs to save the world, just let it burn.
Right.
Anyone else?
I just want it to be well written and not radiation.
Yep, well written sounds
I
good to
have
me.
a book for you. Okay, so we're past the hour. Let's wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Why don't you give us a reminder who you are? Not that your names aren't obviously there, but where we can find your books and purchase these delightful stories that I will read, because it sounds like you guys made good origin stories. I'll admit defeat. Lucas, how about you?
Yeah, well, I'm Lucas Flint. Like I said, I write mostly on adult superhero stuff. I do have some RPG stuff, and you can find my books at my links to my books on my website, www.lucasflint.com, as well as on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and all the other places. I've also got a Kickstarter coming up at the end of the month for an audiobook, a version of my first book, coming up on Saturday, May 30th. So you'll be able to, so if you just keep an eye out for that. And my website's my main place where you can go and find links to my books and social media and all that good stuff.
Charlie, how about you?
You can find me online at CJ Askew on Twitter. I have a Facebook author page under author Charlie J. Askew. I have Instagram author _ Charlie Askew, or pretty sure that's it. No, CJ Askew. Yeah, wow. I also have, you can find my book on lanternfishpress.com is the publisher site. It's also available on Amazon, and that's kind of my plugs.
Mr. Vallon, how about yourself?
My name is Christopher Vallon, and the best place to find my books is probably my author page on Amazon. There's a whole lot of sci-fi stories and superhero stories, and mostly in anthologies, but I also write history books, oddly enough.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask you some more questions about that after.
Okay.
Karen, how about yourself?
I am Karen Diem, author of the Arca series about Zeta Garcia. I just released book 5. Yes, book 5 in the series on May 5th. So, Feliz Cinco de Mayo, no? You can find my stuff on karendiem.com, of course, at most major retailers, since I am wide. And since other people have mentioned it, I do hang out at Twitter pretty often if somebody wants to drop a tweet. It's not a twit, as I originally called it when I started on Twitter, and say hi sometime. That's Karen Diem author, I believe, because there are a couple other Karen Diems.
How dare they?
I know, right? Just because they actually have the name and had it first. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. They should have been like, "Oh, she's moving into this space. We're done with this
Relinquish
name."
control.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm Lucas Flint Books on Twitter, so
I'm
Perfect.
right Remy Flag, and no one calls me Remy. So, Trish, how about you? Where can we find you?
You can find all my books on Amazon. I'm in Kindle Unlimited. The second book in the Heroes of High Tide series, which continues Colleen's journey, is going to be out in August. And, for ease of use, you can just go to superhero-fiction.com and look me up on the author page, and all of my books are on there. So
You stole my ending.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you haven't already, you can find everyone on superhero-fiction.com. You can find the podcast. We have some new exciting things that will be happening very soon. No one in this room knows what they are yet, but we're very excited about it. So
We're holding out for balloon animals.
Yes,
Balloon animals.
I would watch that. Thank you, everyone,
there you go.
tonight. And that is the end of our first convention. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming.
for having me part of it.
Thanks for watching. You too, Scott, with all the good questions.